Median.
So why use median
Why would we ever use the median as our measure, as our test statistic? Yeah.
So usually,
Also, we don't have to confine ourselves just to the median. If we use the median, you're telling people that positive errors are as costly as negative errors. If you use something other than the median, you can tilt the loss. And by the way, the mean is always a symmetric loss function. The median and the mean both have symmetric loss functions. Although the loss function for the median is straight lines, there's the null and the truth. For the sample mean, the loss function looks like that. For the median, the loss function looks like that. So sometimes, in terms of loss, the median is better, although the mean has more power. For when we use the mean and the t, we're implying or suggesting that that's our definition of loss, because we minimize the squared error loss to come up with x bar as our estimator. Under the median, we're defining loss to be that. Oh, yeah, right. And so if we're using this as our objective function, we minimize the objective function by our choice of mu. What we'll discover is that our estimator is the median, the estimator that we would choose. If we're using the top one as our objective function, we're minimizing loss subject to our choice of mu, then we would choose the sample mean. So, to pursue the question about the median, why would we ever do that? Well, to begin with, the median is not so sensitive to extreme observations. And secondly, we don't have to confine ourselves to the median. We could say, we don't really like small errors. They really bother us a lot. So we're going to use the 25th percentile as our measure of central tendency. And then, what we've done is we've tilted the two straight lines. We've rotated them to the right a little bit so that losses of underprediction are very heavily penalized and losses of overprediction are hardly penalized at all. When might you want to do that? Well, we have a perfect example today. What's happening to tax revenues in the states of Pennsylvania and New Jersey these days? They're way under the expectation. So last week there was a lot of commentary about John Corzine and what he's doing to try and get the New Jersey state budget under control. This week they told us that Ed Rendell is putting a hiring freeze in place in the state of Pennsylvania, and he's looking for ways to sequester money, to build up the reserve fund. So for example, in the current fiscal year, Temple has had its state appropriation cut by 4.25%, and that while he's toying with the words now. He says, I'm not actually reducing their allocation, I'm just holding it back in reserve. I'm just not letting them spend it, basically, is what he said. Okay? So there's a case where when they were predicting future tax revenues, they said that an underprediction of future tax revenues is as serious as an overprediction of tax revenue. And they didn't plan for what's happening now. They didn't plan for adequate reserves because they should have been saying that underpredicting tax revenues is really serious. We should be setting aside reserve funds now so that when we do hit a downturn, we don't have to cut state employment, because reducing state employment in a downturn is absolutely the worst thing that we could do. We just deepen the recession. So Pennsylvania, New Jersey, almost every state in the union except for Alaska, where they're floating on lots of oil. Every state in the union, at the worst possible time, is busy freezing hiring or laying people off.
Yeah, I hear California is a real mess.
Well, it's a mess because they don't even have a budget.
I mean, I see the mathematical way, but
well, in terms of loss, when the truth is something other than the mean, but not too big, using the median causes you to incur a bigger loss because the loss associated with the mean is somewhat smaller. But, right, when things are much different from the null, then the loss from using the sample mean is big, but not so big using the median. So that it's important that the two cross. And the other part of the story was that I can take that V and I can tilt it. I can't change the symmetry implicit in using the sample mean as my test, but I can tilt it for the median and the other quantiles, the other orders